owning real estate, which is a great investment, but instead of focusing on doors or units or whatever they talk about on the forums, shifting your focus to square footage and how many feet can you own.
If somebody's looking to get in a commercial real estate game and doesn't know where to start, I'll tell you a good starting point would be to explore some of your stuff, because I've seen it and it's great.
I got introduced to Mike in maybe 2017. He gave me this book, Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash. And I read that book just to prove Mike wrong that I didn't need it. If you want to tell the world about what you're doing, you need to go on social media. The money is important, of course, because it allows us to do certain things, but spending time with my little boy and my little girl and my wife you can't beat it these days.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Save Yourself podcast, brought to you by Unlimited Wealth. Got my cohort here, Mike Schwallie. I got a special guest today, Nolan Sanburn, with us. What's up, Nolan?
Brad, thank you. Mike, thank you guys for having me. I'm happy to be here, excited about it.
Glad you're here, man.
Super stoked. So Nolan, I'm not going to steal his thunder, former professional baseball player. But just take us from the top, Nolan. Where'd you grow up? How'd we get to sitting in this seat today?
Born and raised in Kokomo, Indiana. Played high school baseball there. Went to college at Arkansas. Spent some time there for a couple of years. Fortunately, got drafted by the Oakland A's. One of the cool stories was when I first got called by Oakland, it was Billy Beane was on the other line. After he called me, I kind of like blacked out for like the rest, like 3 days. I don't really remember what happened, but it was an amazing experience playing professional baseball. Read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad in 2016. Probably like a lot of your listeners, they discover passive income. They're trying to figure out ways to become financially free. Spend their time how they want. That whole song and dance. And while I was playing professionally, I again discovered this idea that I was never taught, especially growing up. You work really hard. You trade your time for money. You try and be the best player you can be. And you don't really realize that there's a whole other way to earn a dollar instead of just trading your time for your money, which we all have 24 hours. So while I was playing, I started to buy rental property. In the off season, I'd go back to Kokomo, Indiana, and I'd buy my dad's buddies, friends, coffees and lunches and beers, just trying to find a way to try and learn how the game was played. And I basically started buying up these rental houses, these residential properties. I got 2, and then I got 6, and then I had 12, and I did the whole thing. And while I was, eventually I ended up, retiring from professional baseball. It sounds funny saying retiring because I was like 25 or 26. But I quit playing professionally, went back to college, got my undergrad, and started doing medical sales. Got introduced to Mike Schwallie with the Infinite Banking guys, and have switched it over from residential to commercial, and now it's teaching people how to use infinite banking or this life insurance idea to couple with commercial real estate to basically eliminate income taxes, learn how to protect your money from litigation, and keep Uncle Sam out of your back pocket, basically.
Well, it's funny you went through that pretty quick, but I remember it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
It was a pretty heavy lift to get you educated,
Yeah.
because like many people, you were successful, and you were successful at a young age. So you didn't feel like you were doing anything wrong. You were doing exactly what most other real estate investors were doing at the time, right?
Well, let me tell you the story just to be clear, because I was an arrogant, cocky 26-year-old kid who think he had it all figured out because I had like 12 houses. Okay. So I basically got introduced to Mike back in maybe 2017. I had, again, 12 houses or something. And I met him at a golf event. I just got released. I was jaded because I thought I was still a good player. I really wasn't that good. I was just a wannabe. And I was, and Mike we're chopping it up. He's, we're just hanging out. And Mike's like, hey, so what do you do? I'm telling him about this real estate. I just got released. And as the day goes on, at the end of it, he's like, hey, maybe we should get together. I think I got something that you might be interested in. You're a real estate guy. You're a wannabe money guy. Maybe you want to get more of that. And I was like, you know what, insurance guy, I don't need, this is a stupid ass idea. I don't need insurance. And he's like, dude, I'm not trying to sell anything. He's like, just check it out yourself. And so at the time, he gave me this book, Becoming Your Own Banker, that everybody has heard of, by R. Nelson Nash. And I read that book just to prove Mike wrong that I didn't need it. I said, I don't need this idea. I don't need life insurance. I have cash. I got real estate. I got a way higher return than some life insurance policy. And so I read the book just to prove Mike wrong because I was going to come with some firepower when I met with him in 2 weeks. And I read the book in probably like 48 hours. And I told my wife, I was like, this is a really cool thing. This is a different way of thinking. And she's like, he's an insurance guy. He's trying to sell you something. Yeah. And I was like, you got to check this out.
So now we know what Rachel really thinks about that.
Yeah, that's all I am to him.
Seriously. So I like reread it again. And I genuinely could not believe. I was like, I'm leaving money on the table. Mike was totally right. I'm leaving money on the table. So we got together, started chopping it up, and I came to find out that I had been doing things I thought that were the right way, but then Mike just added a layer of not only litigation protection, but also no Uncle Sam, but just this uninterrupted compounding interest effect as well. And it just turned into a really cool way to couple with what I was already doing. Instead of like, splitting an idea or having to do one thing or the other, I was able to do both at the same time.
And I commend you, man. I mean, the reality is you're a very good, you educate yourself in no matter what you're going to do. You started with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it got the idea going. You then educated yourself through experience with really like-minded people in your small town of Kokomo. But now transitioning, if you'll share on that, I mean, what have you done recently now that's transitioned your real estate career?
Yeah. So again, like a lot of people, I kind of joke and say, what they tell you to do on the Bigger Pockets forums, it's go buy a house. I had like 2 or 3 at the time. And it's really cool because you have this income coming in. You have like $1,400 of passive income. And you're like, whoa, what they were saying on the forums actually works. It's exactly like what they said. And then an AC blows out and it's $6,800. And you're like, okay, there goes the cash flow for that property for the whole year, especially if you've borrowed money. And so what they tell you to do is go buy like 3 more. If you buy 3 more houses, then you can have this extra cash flow offset whatever you were potentially going to lose from an AC going out. And then you start to have 6 to 8 to 10 tenants that you're managing yourself. And Uncle Susie says, or Aunt Susie says, well, I had COVID last week. I can't pay you. My grandma is sick. There are all these excuses coming out. Those are, the favorite of the residential properties. Then you get a couple more. And then you discover like, okay, I can't keep managing all these people.
This passive income's not passive.
It's not
anymore.
passive. You start managing, you're managing all this. And then it's like a property manager steps in, he starts doing the work. And then you have that like,
well, then that's another cost.
Another cost.
Yeah.
10% of that, another cost. And then basically you discover like, okay, if I can get like 30 of these things, then the thing can kind of like really weigh it out. But then you get to a point where you start making a decent amount of money. You start bringing in $14,000, $16,000 a month of just passive income. And then my experience was I felt like maybe my property manager might have been shaving a couple bucks off the top. So then I started to get jaded. I looked on the online portal and the math wasn't adding up. It wasn't, I couldn't reconcile with my accounting. So I started to get spooked. And so what I discovered is residential real estate, I spent so much more time in the business that it was taken away from my other job in medical sales at the time. I started to, lower my productivity over there just to try and manage this passive income over here. And so I read a book back in 2019 called Commercial Real Estate Investing by Dolph De Roos. You can check him out. He's a guy from New Zealand. Flipped my mind around to owning real estate, which is a great investment, but instead of focusing on doors or units or whatever they talk about on the forums, shifting your focus to square footage and how many feet can you own. And so in 2020, I actually bought my first commercial property. It was still the largest building that I owned. It was like 70,000 square feet over in Tarrant, which is like Northeast Birmingham. And I bought that property, did some creative financing on the back end of it. So I was in the deal for no money, which is kind of what we preach in my mastermind and mentorship. But most importantly, I switched my focus from, I got up to 55 houses up in Kokomo, Indiana at one point. And I've completely sold all those houses. And I bought a property last week. I just got to 201,000 square feet. So I'm a fifth of the way there to getting to 1 million feet by 2020. That's my goal, I guess. So I've just switched over to thinking about, and then the leases are triple net. The leases are a lot longer. The debt's easier to acquire. The tenant's more of like a friendship and relationship versus, the tenant looking at you as the greedy landlord with a mustache from Monopoly. Like, it's just a much better, I would say, relationship, and the passive income is so much easier versus having to, go against your tenant in residential, if that makes sense.
And I've heard you say this before, your tenants now in commercial or industrial, that's just a business expense. They're totally cool with it, right? So you're not having to fight them like you did the residential people over and over. Like, they still got to go to work to make money for themselves, even if they have COVID, right? Or somebody else has to go to work. They're going to pay the lease no matter what.
Oh yeah. I mean, the biggest key that I've discovered is when I'm trying to educate, on why commercial is better. Every business owner that I have that are in my tenants, they're grossing anywhere from $2 to $25 million a year. Now, that's not to say they're going to take home more or less, but they understand the difference in their balance. They're not a mom and popper. They understand the difference between their fixed cost and their variable costs. Their cost of goods, that's what it costs for their product and their inventory, the holding costs, whatever. But their rent is a fixed cost on their balance sheet. And the reason why commercial real estate is such a better way to hold real estate is because when I have a 5, sometimes even longer, like 8 to 10 years on a lease, if you look at it from a business owner's perspective, they're able to project and forecast out their fixed cost for 60 to sometimes even 96 months out in a row. So imagine you as a business owner, if you knew that the cost of goods, especially when the COVID thing happened, you had this wonky inventory, this cost of goods, maybe material, labor, there's so much, variation and deviation from what the norm is, but for a fact that your fixed cost, you can predict and anticipate the consistency of that into the future, multiple years. It's going to allow that business owner to be more efficient when they run their business and they, invest in what they're doing.
Yeah. And it's funny that the three of us sit here and we all came about this the same way. Brad, former business owner, myself, former business owner, client of IBC first, then became a practitioner, somebody out there teaching it, same as you. You were a client of mine originally. You were a business owner. You owned your real estate deal. And we sat down one day, possibly over a beer or two, and you told me they were moving your territory at the time to Tuscaloosa, right? And probably a bad business move for me. I told you, well, Nolan, quit sending me referrals. Why don't you just teach these people yourself, right? And that's what you did. And I commend you for it. And you've been doing it now for about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, when I was selling medical equipment for Stryker Sports Medicine, I was in the OR every day. I was an athlete, so I thought that was the thing to do. You go in the OR, you wear the scrubs, and you feel like you're selling something. And you discover quickly, like it feels cool to wear scrubs and get up early and stuff, but you're on everyone else's timeline and you're competing against a bunch of people where you don't have relationships with these doctors. Like they want to say it's about a relationship, but really if something happens with your product, they got like 4 reps in the hallway waiting to take your spot. So there's not a whole lot of relationship, but yeah. So when Mike and I sat down, I had done at least one policy with you at the time. And I got to a point where it was kind of nice. I kind of conveyed to you, I was like, man, they're moving my territory over to Tuscaloosa. It was a cool opportunity for me because I was sharing a territory. I got a chance to move out for 2 weeks in a row. I was like, I'm going to try it out, see if it makes sense. I was up at 4:15, driving an hour that direction to get to the OR to make sure, everything was ready to go for the cases. And it just wasn't for me. And Mike's like, man, you should come and maybe like teach this. Cause I had been bragging about Mike and what you guys were talking about for like years at that point. Cause I probably had, I don't know, maybe 2 years at that point of a policy. And I was like, man, this is a really cool thing. It's not competing against what you're already doing. It's just a better way to enhance it. And Mike's like, dude, you should come and like teach this. And so I talked to Rachel about it and it was really cool because I got home and I was like, man, I just had this really great conversation with Mike. And she's like, this must be a godsend because I've been thinking and like praying about this opportunity because it's been on my heart that this might be the move for you. And so literally I called Mike back the next day. I was like, man, this might be the move. So now I've been really fortunate to be in the trenches with you guys for the past going on just over 3 years now.
And then here comes the TikTok channel.
And
Mike's TikTok famous. I mean, I'm sorry, Nolan's TikTok famous if you guys hadn't found him yet.
Yeah, my kids know Nolan.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I met with a guy who I thought at the time was going to be a client. He's a young kid. And he was like, this was 2.5, almost 3 years ago. And it says, if you want to tell the world about what you're doing and you think that what you're talking about is the right thing, you need to go on social media. And out of the gate, maybe like a lot of people, you feel maybe a little afraid, a little incompetent. And I felt like I had I wasn't good enough, or just a little bit of fear of insecurity about myself. But like anything else, you start doing something, you start to get a feel for it, you start to discover it. So I basically just every day now, if I'm thinking about something on the way in, I drive in, I talk about, hey, this is how I bought my first property. This is how I use my life insurance my products or my policies to go and buy real estate. This is how I did this deal. This is how I bought my car. Like, I just tell stories about how I use my own policies, or how I've bought commercial real estate creatively, how members in our collective are buying properties. So I have become like the infinite banking investor online. And it's so funny because some of my friends will make fun of me, but you'd be blown away at who is on social media and some of the prospects that come in, because everybody's looking for the right answer, but they're trying to find somebody that's genuine, that's transparent, and not trying to sell somebody something, just trying to help them be more efficient with what they're doing too, you know?
Well, not to blow your head up anymore, but I mean, you are genuine on there. You really do want to educate people the way you were educated. And I commend you for it, because you go on there, you're not trying to sell anything. You're literally just trying to educate people the way that you were taught. And so you have a real estate mastermind collective now. What's that called?
Yeah, so we've got the CRE Collective right now, and it's basically a private mentorship for people that have 1 or 2 rental houses, 1 or 200 rental houses, but they're trying to find a way to spend less time in their business and, spend more time with their family. Because like I said, I was that same way. I had all these houses, but I found myself spending more time with my property manager than my own family. And so once I switched over to commercial, I mean, I'm not kidding, I was spending probably 15 hours a month at least with my property manager, just to, make sure all the accounting was correct. But I probably spend 15 minutes a month now just to make sure that the ACHs come in, the debt services go out. If I've got limited partners on a space, then the cash flow goes out there. But it's all automated at this point. So it's just more about just me being a quarterback puppeteering and making sure that everybody is getting paid and, everybody's happy. It's shockingly passive.
So tell us how people can find you on TikTok and in the collective. How do people find you?
So you can find me. I'm on TikTok. I'm on social media. I believe my name, I've changed it. I'm the industrial RE_investor. So industrial real estate investor now on TikTok. And you can just find me on social media of Nolan Sanburn. But at the end of the day, it's nobody, I'm not teaching people really anything that you can't find online. I think the biggest key is most people have a problem with starting something. Maybe you're like me. You've probably followed somebody, signed up for a free PDF, and you never took action with it. I've done that 100 times. And so this kind of thing is more of, hey, instead of somebody just signing you up for something, let's create a step-by-step guide as to how you can get from meeting with the broker first to getting a property under contract, to submitting a letter of intent, to financing the deal, to going and doing an inspection, understanding what a tenant estoppel is, closing the deal, setting up, like all the way down the way to where a tenant or a member doesn't feel like they're totally beside themselves trying to figure this out. So we walk them all the way step by step through. And then to go a step further, we've got this cool thing called, in our own group, it's called the 20-point week. So we've got this pool of action steps that you can take, where meeting with a broker is 2 points. Going and submitting a personal financial statement to a banker is worth 5 points. If you go walk a property, it's worth 8 points. So you basically can find a way to get 20 points every week. And we've got an acquisition coach in our group that will actually help you every week be accountable. And it's not one of those things like, you got to go do it. It's more of like, hey, if you signed up for this, let's just help you get the most out of your membership. And so there's just a pool of actions that you can take. And at that point you say, look, if you'd love to be a part of this, we'd love to have you. But also, if you're not an action taker, you're not going to fit in. And so people that join our group, they know they can take immediate action. They have access to all our materials that's going to help them feel confident to make those decisions and to underwrite those deals, and inevitably spend their time how they want, because they have more passive income from commercial real estate versus residential and those rinky-dink houses up in Indiana.
Yeah. So, I mean, if somebody's looking to get in a commercial real estate game and doesn't know where to start, I tell you a good starting point would be to explore some of your stuff, because I've seen it and it's great.
Well, I appreciate it. And it's one of those things too, is if you guys follow me, and one of the best things about working with you guys is that I can always bounce ideas off of you guys. That's probably my biggest, one of the biggest assets that I personally have is when I've got something, I'll walk downstairs and I'll say, hey, will you look at this with me? Like, you guys have experienced this probably 50 times. You're like, this Nolan guy is annoying me at this point because I'm down here all the time. But I think one of the biggest keys is that I just genuinely, I don't think I have a jealous bone in my body the same way that you guys are. When you see somebody do a deal or succeed in something, you're genuinely excited for them. And that's how I feel when we've got people in our group, because they're joining something that it's a big risk, right? You're joining something from a guy from social media, and that's a kind of a risky move. And so I just try and prove to them, at least out of the gate, like, look, this is just something that I'll lead you to water with all the material, but I can't make you drink. But if you put in the effort, you have so many great people around you and so much material that if you follow on this little yellow brick road, you cannot fail. But you've got to also be, you've got to put yourself first and get the most out of your membership too. If that makes sense.
Anything else before we wrap?
You want to wrap us?
Yeah, let's wrap it. So Nolan, we like to wrap up every episode with this question. So get a little philosophical on you. So think back. You got a couple of little ones now. So think back 5-10 years ago. If I would have said, Nolan, tell me what defines success, what would your answer have been, and how is that different from what your answer is today?
Wow. So what was my success 10 years ago?
Yeah, define success for you 10 years ago and define it today.
Oh, wow. 10 years ago, success would have been me right now being in spring training in the big leagues. I would have just signed a 3-year, $80 million deal. I'd have been flying privately out to Phoenix to, prepare, potentially getting bottle service at a bar, That would have probably been success to me.
Yeah.
That would have been probably the most important thing in the world to me.
Yeah.
I would say now the most important thing to me is getting home every day, seeing my son, Daddy, when I open the door and being able to push him on the swing, have enough food in the fridge to, make my family dinner, and watching like Harry Potter with my wife when my kids are sound asleep and it's quiet.
I love it.
And just spending time with my family, and just, it's remarkable how quickly it changes, when you get to the other side, and the material things that you think are important when you're 24, 25, the money is important, of course, because it allows us to do certain things, but the ability to truly spend your time how you want, wake up doing the things that you love doing, it's tough to put a price on that. So I would say spending time with my little boy and my little girl and my wife is you can't beat it these days. 100%.
Well said, man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it
Great
so
job.
much. Thank you.